All right, we are back here for spooky season of the podcast. We just talked about Fall the House of Usher at Allen Austin. Now, time for some more trick or treat games here with our latest guest, the great Jon Stanko of Barstool Sports, our resident film critic on the podcast. Stanko, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing well this evening. Just hanging out. Spooky season is here. Horror season is here. So enjoying the vibes of late October. How about yourself, Mike?
Doing the same as well. I'm enjoying this stuff. I'm watching my fair share, try to get some scary movies in right now before the holiday hits here. I have a couple on my list I'm going to get to. Like, I'm definitely watching Gerald's Game before Halloween. Excited about that as well.
That movie is messed up, let me tell you. I remember I was at Iona watching that while riding the elliptical one day, and man, oh man, not a movie I wanted to watch in public. Let me tell you that. Jumped a few times on that machine.
Oh no, yeah. There's like it definitely fits in a theme we're going to talk about today here because obviously we had some concepts in the past about what we're going to do for this. I mean, we've done this Halloween special. We've done Mandalorian. We did Dune. I forget what last year was, but I know that like we were hoping to have Dune Part Two out this year, but that did not happen because of the networks push the studios pushing back because of the actor strike.
Yeah, I gotta wait till March for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but we decided to keep things rolling here. We're gonna have a Stanko. What do you call this? You call it like a team building competition.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess team building is right. We're GMs creating our own, I guess horror movie dream lineup, I
Yeah,
guess, something like that.
yeah. A lot, but like spooky. I'll call it spooky season movies. There's like a one like or two like non horror related things in the draft, but it's basically like the horror movie like
Yeah.
draft.
What puts you into a vibe of eeriness,
Yeah, and we're giving you
where you want to cuddle your pillow.
yeah, we're gonna basically give you some list of. I think we have 15 categories here. Stank on our issue to make some teams. We're going to go through the categories. Came up with 10 of these. I came up with five more. So we have 15 at the end. I'm gonna put these on social media here. We're gonna have a vote here. See who is the more intriguing team between myself and Mr. Stanko.
We will see. We will see. I think we'll see how our leanings go in terms of what type of spooky movies we like and what type we don't. And I'm gonna do my best to try and diverge out to different movies because we all have our personal favorites, right? Where it's like I could just pick everything from this type of movie and love it. But I'm gonna try and definitely diverge and go in a few different directions to get a few different tastes in. But this should be fun because I think it's gonna show us a lot about ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Here, so we're gonna alternate in the categories. I'll take who goes first here. So the first category I have on our list here is creature villain. So Stanko, just define what you consider a creature villain.
I think a creature villain is something that is not human. I think is the broad generic term. I think it could be an alien. It could be a beast. It could be an animal. It could be a demon. Like it's just something that is does not have a beating heartbeat that can theoretically be felled by chopping its head off or ending its life. That type of thing. Now, granted, there are um, let's just say that when something starts off as human doesn't always stay human within a franchise, i.e. Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers just comes back to life, but I would consider those two humans. Creature is of a different ilk.
All right, that's fair enough here. So you can start us off here. What is your creature villain here?
So this is where this is we got to set some ground rules here because like generic horror movie monster, this is not the one I'm picking, but would be like zombies, right?
Yeah,
That's
you
a
want
creature.
a specific creature from a
We need
specific
it. We
thing.
need a specific. So, like, if I were to pick zombies, I would need to pick like 28 days later zombies type thing. We need a specific type of thing.
Yeah, you can't just say I want every zombie ever in existence.
All right. Well, okay. I will get into those arguments down in the future. So, I got my top five here of things, but I'm gonna go with my one. Probably one of my favorite horror movies. One of my favorite science fiction movies as well. A very unique presence, a remake, but a remake that's better than the original. I'm going with The Thing from The Thing as my creature villain. John Carpenter's outstanding horror movie set in the snow. Kurt Russell. Um, just it sets the tone right away. The claustrophobia within the environment, I think, is really cool. And great performances with an ambiguous ending. Has everything I like about it with great practical effects. So the thing from that film is terrifying. I don't want to be going in on something and having it bite me in half. So I'm going with the thing.
Yeah, that's a great pick. There's a lot of interesting ones on the board here. I feel like I'm going with an interesting one. I thought as a joke, I was really going to suggest I would take the shark from Jaws as a creature.
That's on my list. Don't worry, Bruce is on my list. He was there. I thought
Yeah,
about it.
I thought about Bruce very hard. I think Bruce is my alternate pick here, but I like. Have you ever seen the movie Leprechaun?
Oh, yes, I've seen the movie Leprechaun,
I,
Jennifer Aniston's breakout film.
I'm taking the leprechaun as my creature. This,
Okay.
this
I,
creature is this guy is so demented and like twisted. Like he is just so mentally like disturbed, and like watching him like go through this thing is so hilarious. That obviously it's a movie Jennifer Aniston never wants to acknowledge she was in ever again after the initial appearance in it. And like
yeah.
the fact they somehow made 6 more movies with this thing is hilarious.
Yeah, I can't say I've seen any of the sequels. I've seen the original just because, like, you should. But yeah, it is a very demented creature with a distinct voice. So I don't know which way you're going in this draft with the Leprechaun as the first pick. So you're throwing me off the scent here.
I have a lot of different directions to go with this one. There's a general theme here, but he is not really. He kind of fits it a little bit. Some of my mode of horror picks.
All right, I'll try and guess your theme come the end of this team building.
All right, so next category here is human villain. So we're going. This is basically has a heartbeat, like can be felled by like a gunshot or a stake through the heart or logic or whatever.
Yes, yes, something along those lines. Yes, everything is vague and opaque in this world of horror, but we're sticking within this kind of circle.
All right, so I have a few options here. I'm gonna take a classic human villain here. I'll take Hannibal Lecter.
Ah, that's a great pick. This is a great pick. He was my 1B. He was my 1B. You
Yeah,
can't go wrong with Hannibal Lecter. You just can't go wrong.
yeah. I still get chills to think of the line. Talk about how it's like, oh, like it's like Johnny goes well with fava beans or something
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. I mean, I ate his liver with some fava beans and a
Yeah,
nice Chianti.
yeah.
It's awesome. I remember when I was a young kid, before I'd ever seen the movie, we played the game Seen It. Have you ever heard of that game, the DVD
I have
game?
I have seen it.
And it was a mini game called Clip It, where they would play a clip from a movie and you would have to guess something about the clip. And that clip came up, and my mom's like, "Oh no, 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 that's bad!" And I was there watching as a kid, going, "Oh my, what is this? Oh, this is intriguing. Anthony Hopkins, you've sucked me in."
Yeah,
So, great pick. I really, I commend you. It's a great pick.
yeah. I couldn't resist the opportunity to have Sir Anthony Hopkins on my team as a cannibal.
I get it. I absolutely get it.
All right, so where are you going with the human villain?
So Hannibal Lecter was my 1B. I'm kind of I got some classic human villains here. Now the thing is, I told myself I wanted to diverge away from just one specific theme, or one specific person or whatever. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go with Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Another classic.
This movie is one of the most brutal horror movies I've ever seen, and it has images that just stick in your brain. You can watch the trailer and be absolutely spooked out, but the character of Leatherface will stick with you. This rendition of it, the original, will stick with you forever and always. And an all-time ending with him just flailing the chainsaw in the middle of the road in the 120-degree Texas heat, it's absolutely insane. So I'm going to go with Leatherface here. There are other options that maybe I would pick as more iconic for me personally, but in terms of diversifying my team and making sure I hit all the bases that I want to hit, I'm going to go Leatherface here for my human villain.
Yeah, it's interesting because neither of us took Freddy or Jason. We're probably two of the more iconic Halloween human villains.
So Jason was up there for me as well. Again, he was on my list. Freddy Krueger was an interesting debate. If I wanted to pick him, I was going to ask you, is he creature or human? Because he's in the dreams, he's a demon type thing, inserting into the mind, but he's also a human. He was a human at one point.
I would have given you him as a human villain.
All right, fair enough. Again, I didn't pick him. I love Nightmare on Elm Street, love it, but didn't pick him. And then I'm not going to go any further onto my list because it might spoil future categories. But I'm going to go with Leatherface as my human villain.
All right, so next up here, you sent in weapon of choice. How are we defining this?
Weapon of choice, I think it would be an iconic weapon that is associated with horror. How would you describe that? I guess I'll do mine, and you can kind of use this as a rule of thumb to yours. Yeah. I'm going with the kitchen knife, the sharp kitchen knife that you pull, out of the stanchion of all the knives, and then you hold it up, and it shines in the light. The moonlight glimmers off of it. I pick it because Michael Myers Halloween, my all-time favorite horror movie. That's his iconic weapon, so I gotta go with it. It's there. It's in everyone's house. You see it, and you could immediately think of a horror movie that's used it before. And also, this type of knife was also used in Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock, one of the first great horror movies that appeased the masses that everyone went to go and see. And one of the most iconic scenes ever is also a knife, somebody getting stabbed. So I'm gonna go with the kitchen knife as my iconic horror movie weapon.
Yeah, I feel like that is like the number one pick on the board in the weapon draft.
I feel pretty good about it. I'm glad that you gave me this one on the first pick because I feel like you would have taken it.
Yeah, I would have taken it too. So I'm gonna go with plan B here. I mean, I think for me, the weapon of choice has to be the chainsaw.
The chainsaw was my second pick. We're aligned here, Michael. We're aligned.
Yeah, because I mean, like aside, I mean, obviously you have a whole franchise based on the chainsaw. Plus, you've seen Freddy Krueger, you've seen Freddy or Jason. I'm mixing up whichever one uses. I think Freddy uses the chainsaw. Jason uses the knife.
Jason uses the machete for sure. I do think Jason has mixed it up with the chainsaw though on various campsites. So I do think there's a little bit of dabbling in both there.
Yeah, because I mean, the chainsaw is like what it's supposed to be used for, and then when you see it being used in a horror movie to basically slice up a person into like different things and chop their limbs off, like you're like, oh boy.
Yeah, nobody is comfortable around a chainsaw unless you are a lumberjack
Yeah.
because you know the horrid things that can go absolutely wrong. So it's just like, oh no, this thing that's going a million miles per hour with sharp teeth on it toward me is never a good thing. And if you ever did like one of those horror movie like horror mazes in a cornfield where you have to run through a house or something, there's always a character with a chainsaw. Every single time you either hear it or you see it. So it's immediately associated with spooky season because of that too.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I definitely think that's a good one here. So let's go to the next category. You sent in here location of choice. So like, how would you find location? Like one specific movie, or like, is it like a city? Is it like a house? Is it like what do you describe location as in your opinion?
So this is interesting. I think we can go super specific to type of movie, or we can go kind of the general, just for example, graveyard. Like graveyards in a movie are terrifying because zombies come out of the ground type thing. Like Night of the Living Dead, opening scene graveyard, they're coming for you, Barbara, that type thing. Or you can go specific movie, and the location there. Since you have the first pick in this round, I will let you set the tone and I will respond.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I think this is gonna be, I think the exception here. I think we have to go catch all. I think like haunted house is just very specific to go to here because there are a lot of movies that have that as sort of their default location. Where like, I mean, even like in like non-horror movie, I mean, like Stranger Things use the haunted house to great effect. We've seen it in a bunch of different things. I think Fall of House of Usher has a house you would qualify as haunted as well. That I think is intriguing. So
Haunting on Hill House too, if you want to talk about Flanagan
and Blind Manor.
and Blind Manor.
Yeah, so I think the haunted house is a staple. I think in this category.
All right, so you're taking that with your pick.
Yep,
All right, all right. I am going to go with the basement.
that's another
Just
classic one.
just the basement. You know when you look down there and it's dark, the light never works. It's creaky wooden steps every single time you go down. There might be a secret passageway that you don't know about but discover when you're staying in an Airbnb and it leads to absolutely horrific things. The basement is just a just cacophony of terror that whips through your mind. As a kid, you were terrified to go down to the basement when it was dark out or when it was raining and it was loud down there. So I'm gonna go with the basement as my overall generic pick for location of horror.
Yeah. Plus, like you mentioned the light thing is, like the light bulb is creaky and then it's dark and you see the flicker and there's somebody in the corner of the basement, like, wait, coming out to get you. That always like gets you. That's always a jump scare. Is very effective for me.
Yes, I would agree. It's there. We're gonna eventually touch on tropes that we think work in horror movies, and guess what? I think turning on the dangling light to go down to the basement is one of those tropes that kind of always hits the right notes.
All right. So let's go now to number 5 here. You can go first in this one here. So horror director. So this is a director of horror films. So like I think I'm giving, since you are the movie guy, I'll let you go first in this category.
I mean, this is a matter of preference thing. I think there are some people who love the Evil Dead, so Sam Raimi's up there. You got the recent guy Ari Aster, who's creating some artful stuff. You got James Wan, who's created franchises off this horror thing, and the kind of more modern appeal here. But I'm gonna go with my OG. He directed one of my favorite movies of all time, if not my favorite. I'm gonna go with John Carpenter. Um, The dude just loves practical effects. He loves to do things on short shoestring budgets and make things terrifying. Maybe he hasn't made a great horror movie in a really, really long time, but my favorite horror movies are directed by John Carpenter, and he had a run that was outstanding. I think there are other people that you could pick too, like Wes Craven or Alfred Hitchcock or George Romero for all the zombie movies. But in terms of vibe for horror movies that I love and the ones that are true to my heart, I'm gonna go with John Carpenter.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Always a lot of classic ones on the board here. I'm going with the relatively new age pick here. I'm gonna take Flanagan off the board here for my director. So
I know you did make this TV movie. We should have specified before we started picking, but this
but
category was TV or movie, so
he
you
does
get it.
both.
He does do both. He does do both.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, with you had all of his Netflix properties as well. Plus, I mean, he did Doctor Sleep. He did a sequel to Shining, and it worked, which it should not have worked.
It
Which is
worked. It worked really, really well. Now this is backtracking a little bit, but like to location, if you went super specific, I was going the Overlook Hotel as my specific location for horror.
yeah.
But we went generic, which is fine.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Flanagan stuff, I mean, like a lot his movies. We mentioned Gerald's Game off the air, like how ridiculous, like creepy that movie is. Oculus, I watched recently with The Mirror with Karen Gillan, and it like that movie is disturbing at different points here. Plus, I mean, for me, the thing that seals me is that like he is basically the stamp approval from Stephen King to adapt all of Stephen King stuff, which to me that's a big green light for me on Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, I mean, it. Mike Flanagan has now the reputation where the people hand him a project and kind of not talk to him and let him work his magic type thing. And you mentioned that he's working on a big project now that has an absolutely great cast, which is another adaptation of a Stephen King thing coming up. And that's before he works on the Dark Tower series for Amazon. So the man is busy too. He doesn't stop, which I think is also commendable because when you have success, you can in theory pick your projects and take time between working on what you want to work on. But Flanagan just never seems to stop.
Plus, I think every year since we've done the Halloween pop culture podcast, Flanagan has been in every edition of it. He's had something every year.
Yeah, I mean, he puts out something every year. He's consistent, and guess what? Nothing he puts out really stinks,
Yeah.
right? And nothing is god awful. It's maybe not as good as the ceiling, but the floor is always pretty high.
Yeah, offhand, like from what all the Flanagan stuff you've seen, favorite Flanagan project.
Great question. I think I have to go Hill House. That episode with the funeral, that I believe that was Hill House. That was in the middle of the season. Don't remember exactly what the episode was, but Hill Hill House. I don't think I was expecting anything either. So when it took me by surprise, I was like, oh shit, who is this guy? Um, so I think that one is up there for me for Flanagan project.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of like the top three right now, I think, and this is not order anyway, it's Doctor Sleep, Hill House, and Midnight Mass.
Okay. Again, you like Midnight Mass a little bit more than I did. I remember we talked about it. But I mean, again, he doesn't make a bad project, so I could agree with you.
All right, so next up here we have Scream Queen. So Stanko, I'll let you handle the obvious explanation on this one.
Yeah, you take the honors. I got John Carpenter first. You went Flanagan. You get the honors on this one.
Explain the category.
Oh, explain the category. Okay. Well, Scream Queen. I mean, this is kind of now. This is a question that a coworker raised up to me. Is a Scream Queen the same as a final girl? I say no. I say they're two. They can be the same thing. They can be, but they are two distinctly different things as well. They don't need to be absolutely linked together. A Scream Queen can be different than the final girl, but the Scream Queen is the one who gets the big moment, the camera in their face, the turnaround, the shocked look, the hands up in the air, like the whole entire thing. That's the Scream Queen.
Yeah, I think for sure I agree with you on that. Obviously, like they can be the same. The final girl can be the same thing, but like I think it's more fun to believe they're different.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah, so I'll take the classic. I'll take Jamie Lee Curtis as my Scream Queen.
It's the right answer. I can't argue with you. It was my 1-1. It's the absolute right answer.
I mean, like I think she's the reason that we have the term. I think yeah, if you're giving me first pick, I sorry I have to go.
Okay. All right. Now, look at me. Look at me, Mike.
I'm looking.
I'm gonna go a little bit unconventional here. I'm gonna diverge along the path. There's a lot of great options I could pick. I could pick Neve Campbell from the Scream franchise. I mean, she's in nearly every single one, and the ones that she's in are usually better than most. I can go Janet Leigh from Psycho, the original Scream Queen, if you will. I can go Samara Weaving, who I just have a crush on, and I think is great in horror movies like Ready or Not, or being the first victim in the new Scream. But I'm gonna go with another modern actress, one who's on the rise. I'm taking her also for stock in the future.
Yeah.
I'm going with Mia Goth.
Ooh.
I'm going with Mia Goth because in X, she was outstanding. Didn't necessarily was the scream queen part, but then you go to Pearl, where she's the killer. Yet she's the one who's screaming. She's the one who's terrified, not only of terrified of her parents, terrified of her life. She's screaming in terror when she's killing people. She's absolutely terrifying. And then if you watch Infinity Pool, she has the scream of madness when she's torturing people as well in an evil, maniacal way, both mentally and physically. And then she has Maxine coming out to complete the trilogy with Ty West. So this is building on stock, on stock, on stock. This is building for my future, a prospect. Mia Goth is my scream queen.
I cannot argue with that. So this is like a stock on the rise pick.
This is the stock on the rise pick. She's very talented now, don't worry. But maybe she's batting like sixth in the order, right? She's not legendary yet, if you will. She hasn't cemented herself to be remembered in 20 years, but I think she has a great possibility to.
All right, so let's go now to the next category, which is 80s horror movie, just self-explanatory. Any horror movie that came out in the 1980s. So, Stanko, you get first pick on this one.
So now this is where the strategy of my team building came in. This is where I did a really good job. I'm proud of myself. Going to pat myself on the back because I picked as my creature The Thing as my creature movie villain, right? Which means I can't pick The Thing the movie, right? I want to diversify. I want to have a good breadth of ingredients in my basket, if you will, for this team. So I'm going to go with The Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, as my 80s horror movie. Freddy Krueger, absolutely terrifying. A great screen queen with Heather Langenkamp. Again, outstanding. Outstanding death from Johnny Depp, the blood funneling up from the bed. You can't beat it. So good. Nightmare on Elm Street, all-time classic. That's going to be my 80s horror movie.
Yeah, that was a great pick. That was my number one on the board. I think you nailed that one.
It's great. I mean, there are other good options out there that you could pick from. But Nightmare on Elm Street is the one I've rewatched of the most of the 80s horror, so I got to go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a classic pick. And this one, I'll sneak it in here in terms of just an offbeat pick here. Give me Gremlins.
Oh, confession. I've never seen Gremlins.
Yeah, Gremlins is pretty messed up if you're not careful watching it.
I have never seen it, so I can't comment, but I do know it's incredibly popular. So
Yeah, so give me Gremlins. I'll get that one on the board.
all right, fair enough. Now you get the first pick on the 90s horror.
Yep, 90s horror movies. And this one, I'm going off the board a little bit here. A little divergent path here in terms of the type of horror we're covering here. So I'm gonna go more of the psychological horror here. And this one, I think you will be like flabbergasted when you hear the pick. Give me
Okay.
Twin Peaks Firewalk with me.
What is that? Is that a spin-off of the television show?
Yes, it is. It is an R-rated take on the television show. It's a prequel to the series, and it's the week before Laura Palmer is murdered, and we see it gets very dark, very disturbing, and like there's a lot of like psychological horror, and you get to see a lot of Cheryl Lee being a great scream queen.
Okay, all right. I don't know about this movie. I really enjoyed the first season of Twin Peaks. So I don't know this movie. You're going to have to send me information on this because this sounds really interesting. But
It,
I love a pick for you, Mike, and that's definitely a pick for you.
yeah, this is like for me, it's like this has felt like David Lynch was finally free from the constraints of network television and able to tell the story he wanted here. And like if you watched the revival on Showtime, The Return, like this movie is very, very important for that.
Okay, all right. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, it came out in 1992, I think, right after the show was canceled.
Well, obviously he had more stories to tell, if you will. So I will have to check this out because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's pretty much like most of the cast of the show is back there. They have a few new characters mixed in as well. It's basically a lot of Laura Palmer drama.
Okay. All right. All right. I like being educated. You taught me something new, Mike. You taught me something new.
All right.
I'm not going to teach you anything new with my 1990s pick. You already mentioned the main character from it, the iconic character, but I'm going to go with The Silence of the Lambs for my 1990s horror film. Academy Award winner, one of my favorite movies of all time. Came out in 1991. This movie absolutely slaps, Mike. It doesn't slow down. It's still so good. You've already touched upon it. I love it. So my 90s horror is The Silence of the Lambs.
I mean, that's a classic. I mean, once I took Hannibal, it basically freed you up to take that one.
Correct. So that's what's happened. See, we're diversifying here. Now, I did have other options. I thought Scream, because it created a new genre, if you will, and it's still incredibly rewatchable. And then I also was going to go a little bit maybe off the board with the Blair Witch Project because it created a whole new genre with the shaky cam. It had the
Uh,
culture in an absolute frenzy because they didn't know what was real and what wasn't. So those are my other two options for the 90s.
yeah, those like yeah, Blair Witch is like a sleeper on my '90s list.
Yeah, and I remember I watched it one time and I didn't like it the first time I watched it. Maybe I was hoity-toity, like back in my college days when I thought I was being super smart by disliking something that was cool. Like, you learn to appreciate it. And then I rewatched it a couple years ago, and holy shit, man, it's fucking terrifying. I watched it and I was like, good lord. I gave this a C plus the first time I watched it. This is an A. I'm spooked out of my pants right now in the middle of the day. So it still hits.
It does still hit here. So now let's go to the 2000s horror movie. So where you want to go there, Stanko?
2000s horror movie. So this is when I started watching horror in the 2000s. I remember the first horror movie I watched, I believe, was The Omen at my friend Evan's house, and I was terrified. The remake of The Omen, remake. And then I went to go see The Hills Have Eyes in theaters, which was a terrifying experience, and I shouldn't have done it. But for the 2000s, there's a lot of good movies to pick from, and it's a movie that I've already mentioned, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. 28 Days Later is probably my favorite zombie movie. Cillian Murphy is outstanding in it. The cast is so much deeper than you think it is when you watch it. There's so many people in it that like Brendan Gleeson's in it out of nowhere, and he has an absolutely terrifying scene with the crow. If you've seen the movie before, and the thing with me, Mike, is this movie 28 Days Later did with the scene where Cillian Murphy is breaking into the army base to rescue his friends. You don't know who's the monster and who isn't anymore, but you don't know. We also are rooting for the monster at some point, and it's one of those movies that flips the script on you for 20 minutes where you're going, holy shit, the humans are the bad guys. And it's one of the first movies that had that click for me, and it's immensely rewatchable too. So gonna go with 28 Days Later.
Yeah, hard to go wrong with that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, 28 Days Later. Let me double check the year on that. 2002. 2002, 28 Days Later.
Yep. I'm going to go closer to the end of the decade for my pick here. I'm going to go Cloverfield as my 2000s horror movie pick.
Okay, why do you like Cloverfield?
I think, like you said before, the horror, like the found footage aspect that I like with Blair Witch, this one I think takes another level here. I think it's like they have really clever storytelling built in here, and then like the ability of like having the monster be basically off screen the entire movie and just still like we're causing mayhem all over the place. You're seeing buildings collapsing. You're seeing people dying gruesome deaths here, and then like at the end, like or basically everyone's dead, and like the camera just drops to the ground at the end of the movie. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a movie that, excuse me, that took the culture by storm when it came out. I would argue that 10 Cloverfield Lane, I like that movie more. Um, but I think you could also classify that in horror if you wanted to, because it's also incredibly uneasy to watch throughout the whole entire thing. But Cloverfield Lane, I remember the whole Statue of Liberty was the massive thing, right? Where it gets thrown onto the ground for scale and stuff like that. That was a huge moment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely an iconic moment for me here in terms of this. So now we'll go to 2010's horror movie. And I believe I start this one here, correct?
Yes, you do.
All right, so I mentioned earlier, I'm taking Doctor Sleep as my 2010's pick.
Really?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like again
Wow.
of The Shining. This movie had no business being as good as it was, and I think the casting was spot on here. The recreation of the Overlook Hotel and like some of the monster, the ghosts from the movie, the twins being back in it was terrifying. Like seeing them again, watching like Danny Torrance have to go back and like confront like all of his demons. Like definitely a fun horror take on that, like from that movie.
Yeah, and this is one of the ones where I got to be hoity-toity and say I read the book first, and it did a great job adopting the book. And I would encourage you to watch if you haven't the extended director's cut. It was on HBO Max for a time, now Max, and it's really good. It extenuates the horror. It's really Rebecca Ferguson is fantastic as the lead actress in that movie. It's quite good, and I'm a little bit surprised you picked it for 2010's movie as a whole, but I can't argue with it because I had a great time watching it.
Yeah, for me, it's like that's the first one that popped in my head. And here, obviously, you mentioned 10 Cloverfield Lane. I thought about that too, but that sort of goes into the psychological horror category. I went already with Twin Peaks Firewalk with me, so I wanted to not double down too much.
Okay, all right. Um, 2010's horror. This is where do I want to do a pick for me? Or do I want to do a pick for the masses? Do I want to do a pick for everyone? Like,
I think you should do what you want.
do what I want. See, here's the thing. The smart pick would be Get Out.
Yeah.
That's the smart pick because it's great. It was critically and universally acclaimed. It created conversation, started everywhere. Like that's the right pick. It's not the pick I'm gonna make. The pick I'm gonna make is it. Um, this movie it came out around my birthday, and good lord, Pennywise was so goddamn terrifying. Bill Skarsgård, absolutely outstanding. I remember I went to go see this by myself opening weekend, and I got spooked out of my mind. And then the next weekend for my birthday, rung up all my friends, and I was like, guys, we're going to the movies. You're gonna watch it, and I'm gonna watch you watch it. And I would sit there in the theater, knowing when something's coming, turn my head, and just watch them go woo and whatever. And I had a great time. It's outstanding. And I now rewatch it probably once every 2 years. So I'm gonna go with it. I think it does a great job adopting something that's really really hard to adopt, and so it's my pick for the 2010s.
And when it first came out too, like this thing took like they had a pop culture moment too when it came out. Everybody was talking about it.
Oh, it's one of the biggest grossing R-rated movies of all time. And for me, rightfully so. The sequel, we don't need to talk about it as much because it's not as good. But the first one, it's outstanding.
Yeah, another sleeper in that category I thought about too. I'll save it for later on here, but let's go to this is the family friendly spooky season movie or show. So like just to give like the one non horror pick on this board.
Yeah, so this is the one I had trouble picking because my family, we never, ever, ever watched horror movies together. Like my parents don't do anything that's remotely spooky. They don't like when there's the skeletons at the end of Raiders in the Lost Ark because that's too much. Um, so I'm gonna look this up to make sure I get the right title. So bear with me. But this is an old one that my grandfather introduced me to. So Abbott and this is it. I'm going super duper old school with you. Super duper old school. All right. Now I could go old and go like Young Frankenstein, right? The kind of comedy horror type thing with Mel Brooks, but no. I'm gonna go Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein from 1948. This is a movie I watched with my grandfather and I watched with my family. We would put it on, old black and white slapstick comedy, but it hit. It was a family moment when we watched it. I would rewatch it for years. Still remember some scenes of it word for word. So this is the pick for me. This is the pick for the Stanko clan. I'm going with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
I was not expecting you to go back to 1948.
Hey, listen, that's when I was introduced to it. It was one of my grandfather's favorite people were Abbott and Costello. So he had to show me this movie, and it stuck with me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with a classic, not as far back as you went, but I'll go with a. I have to put this in here for family friendly category. Give me It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Okay, all right. I'm not a big Charlie Brown guy, Mike. Gonna be honest. I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, but again, this is iconic.
I get it. I get it. I get it. My cousin's a huge fan too. Here's the thing: I just never found it very funny. I don't know if it's meant to be funny, but I just never found it very funny. But I'll give you a rock for Christmas or for Halloween, whenever you want, Mike. I'll put a rock in your pillowcase.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it's like, I mean, it tells you how crazy it is too. It's like this was on ABC for many, many years. It would air it like weeks before Halloween here. Like I remember the big uproar when like Apple got the rights and it wasn't on free TV anymore. Like people were like losing their minds about this.
Yeah, it is a staple. Like it is a staple of culture. Like I think the Apple Charlie Brown Halloween and Charlie Brown Christmas are two things that even if you don't like Charlie Brown, you've seen it at least 5 times just because you're around and you exist in the world, right? It's like fucking Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's just like you exist and it's there, and so you know it. So I can't fault you for the pick.
Yeah. It's also iconic that all the Charlie runs up for like the babble like adults talking. That's always gets me every time.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Like what?
As long as it makes you laugh, man. As long as it makes you laugh.
All right, so let's go with trope that works. So you want to explain this category here?
Well, I mean, every horror is filled with tropes. It's got classic in terms of filmmaking tropes for jump scares. It's got character tropes. It's got thematic tropes, if you will, as well. You can pick from countless tropes in terms of things that are just rehashed through different franchises, through different characters, creatures, decades, directors, anything. These are things that just they will never die. You know how the villain never dies? That's a trope in itself.
Yep.
These tropes will never die.
All right, so you're up first on the. Actually, I think I'm up first in the trope category, correct?
You were up first on the trope category, sir.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the classic. I think the classic trope I feel like here is like they always a debate movie. Should we split up? Should we stick together? They always end up splitting up, and they all end up getting killed because of it. So this always gets me because like I always love it because like the smart people who've watched horror movies all say, oh, like you got to stick together, don't split up, and then they always find a reason to split up, and they all end up getting killed for it.
Yeah, I mean that's a great example. It's a great example. They make fun of it in Scream where it says "Never say I'll be right back" or whatever, and then they go "Ooh!" It's a great example. You stick together because you want to hunt in a pack or survive in a pack. But this is a classic one. It's a great pick.
It's a great pick. So what's your trope?
So I had two, but I'm gonna go with one that it always works for me. The slow walk of the villain. This is more for old school horror movies like 70s and 80s, but when the horror villain is walking slowly down the hallway and the shadows just creeping closer, and you could see like the character is either like in the kitchen or something, just putting things away, or just doesn't see that the character that like when Michael Myers just gets up from the ground, you slowly see him rising up and approaching, like that slowness, that stillness, yet still slowly moving toward the existential dread. That is always going to stick with me and work for me. So the slow moving villain, when it's done really well, is a trope that I will never get tired of.
And that works great in like the haunted house experiences too, when like you have the people playing the villains just like kind of walk behind you when you're walking through the haunted house. That always works.
Right, exactly. It just works. And I don't know why, but it's the first thing I thought of. And I was like, all right, there's a reason this is the first thing that popped into my head. And then I thought about more of like, the movie making stuff where it's like the mirror where they're brushing their teeth and then they close the mirror and there's something behind them. Or the quick cuts where they're having a conversation and then the demon is behind them, the insidious cut where, oh my God, how'd that get there? But for me, it's the slow walk of the villain about to kill somebody. I don't know. It tickles me.
All right, so you're up now here for any era of horror movie that is underrated in your opinion.
We're diving back deep. This is a Stanko pick. This is a Stanko pick. This is a pick that's not going to win me any points. But this is a pick that when I watched this movie, I paused it, told Emma to come in and watch this scene because it was outstanding. I'm going with you're gonna laugh. You're gonna absolutely laugh. I'm going with the 1933 King Kong.
1933 King Kong.
The 1933 King Kong. This movie is. Can you imagine watching this? You haven't seen it, but watching this movie in 1933 had to be absolutely terrifying. When King Kong comes bashing through the barriers of these natives on this island and starts eating people, ripping them, stepping on them like he's Godzilla. This movie is ruthless. If it had any sense of, if it was in 1933, it'd be rated R, NC-17 with the brutality that King Kong is doing, surviving spear attacks and everything. They did such a good job for that time when it was made, evoking how terrifying this beast is. This beast that's going to be tamed by love. But when you first meet him, good Lord, it's so scary. So I'm going with King Kong, 1933. It's maybe not an underrated movie because it's like referred to as one of the greatest movies. Like if you look back on it as like a beast movie and it has to be there. But in terms of the horror aspect, when this character's first introduced, good Lord, it's going to leave an impact. I promise you.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought for like when you go back to 1933, I thought we are talking about like, oh, this could be at the radio version of War of the Worlds. People had no idea what was going on. I thought the planet was actually being invaded by aliens.
No, I had more modern versions, more modern stuff that I could do, but like this is the pick for me. And I'm not trying to educate your listeners or whatever. Movies are subjective, and this is me when I watched it. And when I watched King Kong barge in for the first time and absolutely decimate a whole entire tribe of natives on this island, it stuck with me and it still sticks me today.
All right, so I'm gonna go out for underrated horror movie. I feel like this one, I mean, it's gotten some credit, but I feel like it's sort of slipped under the radar again as newer movies have come out in terms of like horror quality here. Give me A Quiet Place as the underrated horror movie.
Okay,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm curious. Why do you think it's underrated?
I feel like this had a moment when it came out in terms of people like being, oh, like can't be quiet, like gotta be quiet, so on and so forth. They like as these newer movies that come out, people have forgotten about the franchise a little bit because obviously we had COVID delay the sequel, we had a lot of stuff going on here, but just the fact that something so different in terms of like the horror is the fact that you can't like you make a sound, you're dead. and like the existential dread that's going through the movie. He's trying to see these people trying to like play a game without making noise from the dice, or like fill a water thing without splashing too loudly, or like having to go by a stream to talk because that's the only way you can communicate without being alerting these blind like creatures who can just echolocate you to death. So like that's a lot of fun.
I mean, it was one of the best movie theater experiences that I ever had. And it's my type of movie theater experience where everyone is quiet. Like that's the purpose of the movie. Nobody is talking. It's the best. So I really, really enjoy this movie. If people are hesitant about it and you think it's underrated, people should definitely check into it because it's something I guarantee it's something like you haven't seen before.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, like you first see it. I mean, like you're used to movies where like like you have people say, "Oh, should we split up?" Like the first 5 minutes of the movie. This is a spoiler you have not seen it here. Like a little kid gets eaten because he has to play with a one of those like light up like the loud sound helicopters that you always play with as a child.
Yeah, like a Hess truck, if you will, like a
Yeah,
Hess Troy. Like
yeah,
yeah, and it leads to his doom.
yeah. It certainly does here. So now we're gonna go with the fun here. So overrated horror movie here. So this is gonna be a fun one, Stanko.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to lose points. I really feel like I'm ruining my team for the public with these last few rounds, but I'm picking for myself. It's late at night. We're just going to go with the flow here.
Yeah. I think for me, I have one I feel like I'm gonna go with here. I think The Sixth Sense, I think, is a little overrated.
Now, is that because you know the twist?
Even with knowing the twist, I think like it got way more play than it should have.
Okay, see, my one of my on my short list was Signs. It's not my pick, but Signs. Everyone's like, "Oh, that alien! The first time you see it's terrifying," and I'm like, I mean, sure, it's creepy, but it was never like, "Oh my god" type thing.
Yeah, I mean, The Sixth Sense, I feel like everybody made a big thing because it's the movie where the trailer is the kids going, "I see dead people,"
Yeah.
and like that made everybody like obsessed with the movie. I'm like, it's not as good as it should be.
Okay. All right. I think I've only seen The Sixth Sense once or twice. I did not know the twist going in, so I do think it was shocking for me when I saw it. Um, I can't. I'm curious. I'm not a huge M Night Shyamalan guy, and this is the movie that obviously made him a superstar and a rocket. Um, but I'll have to rewatch it again and kind of give it a taste. See if the filmmaking is as high quality without the plot twist at the very end.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the twist ends up making the movie. I think that's the problem I have with it.
Okay, all right. You don't like it. You don't like that being the sole thing, that kind of catalyst that kind of carries it over the top.
Yeah, no, and I don't think, and I also might not be. I also probably an anti Shyamalan guy, not really into all of his stuff. I think this sort of like, I mean, he ruined like Avatar: The Last Airbender, the movie for me. He killed that for
Yeah,
me. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I'm just not a big fan of his style. I think it's maybe reflecting my pick there.
I do like. I believe it was a Knock at the Cabin was the one that came out this year with Dave Bautista.
Yeah,
I did like that. I was surprised by how much I liked it. I liked it a lot better. Well, Old on the beach, right? Old. I
yeah.
liked it a lot better than that.
All right, so you're
Um,
overrated horror movie now.
yeah, I'm gonna lose points. I'm gonna lose points. I'm gonna go with the franchise here.
A whole
Overrated.
franchise.
Yeah, going the Evil Dead franchise.
Oh, that will get you some hate on the internet.
It will. It will, but I'm sorry. It doesn't stick with me. The first one I think is really good because it's scary. But then the second one gets campier. I lose it. Army of Darkness, lose it again. The remakes I can't I tried rewatching the remakes, but I think the first one came out in 2013. It was too gory and too gross. I couldn't do it. Like I was like I can't stomach this. I can't. Um so I'm gonna go the Evil Dead franchise because it never hit with me. Um, and the Deadites and the culture and the whole entire thing, like it has so many tropes that built in that would think I would latch onto, but something about it just doesn't work for me. So I'm gonna go with the Evil Dead franchise. I'm sorry, Bruce Campbell, but that's my pick, and I probably just lost the whole entire poll with that selection.
Yeah, the internet's gonna come for Stanko for this pick.
That's fine. I am who I am. What are you gonna do?
All right, so last one here, iconic costume here. So like this is my addition here. Sort of like the iconic like horror movie costume. And so I feel like this would be a fun one for you to start with, Stanko.
I mean, I think this is an easy pick. And if you're giving me the first pick, I'm going to take it.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with Dracula.
Okay.
He is a classic. He is a classic villain of both literature and film. He's a vampire. Vampires are a horror creature, and I think he's arguably the most popular creature dress up in the history of Halloween. I would say so. So I'm gonna go with Dracula as for the iconic costume.
I'm going Frankenstein's monster.
Okay, you went old school as well. You went old school as well.
Yeah, for me, iconic means that like you need to look at it instantly to be able to identify what it is. I don't think anybody sees a Frankenstein's monster doesn't know what that is.
That I guess that's true. Yeah, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess you could see a vampire and not think Dracula. You could think Edward Cullen,
Yeah.
but okay.
Are you the guy from Twilight?
Yeah, the guy from Twilight. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I also will mention here, like not like a modern one that was on my list was the twins from The Shining. I feel like that one's also very iconic.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, people double up with that. My second pick was Ghostface, just the mask.
Yeah.
That was my second pick.
And
But
for
I go Dracula.
and for the laugh and for the like the shits and giggles pick, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
Okay, that's a good one too. That's I mean that's fun to dress up as too. You're just wearing a giant.
Yep.
Okay, now this is again. I'm going to backtrack. I'm really bad at this podcasting thing. I bounce back and forth. But would Ghostbusters have been a proper selection under the family horror category?
It would have. It would have been
Shoot.
a family friendly spooky like spooky season movie or whatnot.
Now that's like not exactly family friendly, if you will. There are quite a few curse words, but I made my pick. I will do it. That's my brain wasn't thinking. My brain wasn't thinking.
If you had gone
Yeah.
Charlie Brown, I would have gone Ghostbusters.
All right. Okay. All right.
All right. So
We make mistakes.
the reason the teams here, Stanko's team here is creature villain of the thing, Leatherface's human villain, the kitchen knife for weapon of choice, the basement for location of choice, director John Carpenter, screen queen Mia Goth, 80s movie Nightmare on Elm Street, 90s movie Silence of the Lambs, 2000s movie 28 Days Later, 2010s movie It, family friendly spooky season movie or show Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein from 1948, The Slow Walk of the Villains is trope that works, King Kong from 1933's underrated horror movie, the entire Evil Dead franchise is overrated according to Stanko, and Dracula the most iconic costume.
Those are my picks. Those are my picks.
Yeah, I think you said apart from 11, I think the rest of them I think you feel good about.
I mean, there's definitely some picks that are just meant for me. I don't think Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and King Kong are gonna ring any bells for anyone since they're made before 1950. But I gotta stay true to myself, man. When you sent these categories, these are my gut reactions. So I gotta stick with it.
All right, so my picks here. The Leprechaun from the movie Leprechaun in 1993. Hannibal
Outrageous.
Lecter for human villain. The chainsaws, the weapon of choice. The haunted house, location of choice. Mike Flang is my director. Jamie Lee Curtis is the screen queen. Gremlins from the 80s. Twin Peaks Firewall. I'm not going to get a ton of points in the 90s, but I'll take that one as a pick. Cloverfield for 2000s. Dr. Sleep 2010s movie. It's the Great Pumpkin. Charlie Brown for family friendly spooky season movie or show. Splitting up in horror movies, a trope that works. A Quiet Place is underrated. The Sixth Sense is overrated. And Frankenstein's monster is an iconic costume. So this will be a fun poll to see how this does.
This will be a very curious poll. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of love from a lot of people. There might be a third option saying neither. They both suck.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. But I'm glad that we got a mishmash of things that are both populist, but also things that are definitely for ourselves.
Yeah, like for me, I guarantee you people will look at my list and say, like, Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me is not a horror movie. And then I say, yes, it is.
Okay, well again, I haven't seen it, so I can't pass judgment. But again, that is a deep cut, Mike. That's a deep cut.
I had that. I knew I had to do that one.
Listen, you got to stick to your guns, and sometimes you just got to find something you love. So I love it. You're gonna have to send me the info on that movie because I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I'll send you it after the show here. And since as we're wrapping up here, as we always do, what's some stuff you've been streaming lately or checking out movie wise?
I've been making up for some lost time, so watched a couple. So this is not horror movie related, but I've been catching up on Marvel before I cancel my Disney Plus because I'm not paying $150 a year. So I only have two movies left. But in terms of other good movies I've watched recently, I watched Smile on Paramount Plus, which I liked a ton. That was a horror movie from last year. Really creeped me out. I watched the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mike. Mutant Mayhem. Loved it. Had a great time. It is 90s and 2000s nostalgia with the soundtrack and stuff. It's great. And here's a movie I've watched recently it's gonna blow your socks off. It's not necessarily good, but it's incredibly unique. You ever heard of the movie Apt Pupil?
No.
Okay. What if I told you this was a Stephen King based movie that stars Ian McKellen as a Nazi corrupting a child to become like a Nazi?
That's very bizarre.
That's the movie. That's There's a child in this film who is obsessed with German culture, discovers that his neighbor, Ian McKellen, was a former Nazi soldier and still believes in these things, and then they link up and create a friendship with one another, which leads to some mental warfare and some other violence.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It it was fun. I don't know if it was good. I didn't love it. Like, it's not incredibly well made, but the premise, I was like, I have to watch this. Ian McKellen as a Nazi. I only picture him as Gandalf or like Magneto. Like, what is this? So that's just a very, very strange movie. So Apt Pupil on Amazon Prime for anyone who wants to take a really trip down movie road and watch a truly strange movie.
Yeah, I'll throw some stuff in. I'm catching up on in terms of like streaming stuff. I'm still back in July, and some of the stuff I'm watching. I really just finished Quarterback like a week ago from Netflix. That was fun.
Are you a bigger fan of Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, he's very religious. I'll give him that.
He is very religious.
Yeah, I did respect him though for having the 24 hours of no work, so he can actually spend time with his family. I did respect that.
Yeah, people got to shut their brains off from work. My fiance will tell me that.
Yeah, I watched that one. Secret Invasion sucks. I'll say that much. I've only got one episode left of it.
Okay, you haven't even watched the finale, which people said was the worst part.
It's bad. I'll tell you that much. They had
There's a
they
lot,
had they had nothing.
and they spent a lot of money on it too.
They did. I also watching Hijack on Apple TV Plus. That's much better.
I heard that's the Idris Elba one, right?
Yes,
I heard great things about it. People seem to really love it.
it's very fun. I will say that here. Like it takes a like. There's a little bit of special disbelief with the hijackers who are kind of dumb, but like the mechanics of like what Idris Elba is trying to do on the plane is fun.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess also a horror movie trope. Sometimes the bad guys are really stupid.
Yeah, like these guys, like the hijackers, the sounds you watch, they act like they've never been on a flight before.
All right. Well, I know in terms of Apple TV Plus, I'm very excited for the King Kong series that's coming out. I don't remember like the official title for it, but the trailers have all looked really good. The Russells are involved, so I probably am going to tune into that when it premieres, which will be my first ever like Apple show because I was never a Ted Lasso guy or anything.
Yeah, and I will also tell you too, the Fall of the House of Usher, highly recommend. Talk about the beginning of the podcast to Alan Austin, like a great closeout to Netflix Flanagan era with that show. Like the cast
That's
is great too, and stacked cast for that show.
when Emma and I are done watching Great British Bake Off because that's where I am in my life. The next thing we're watching is The House of Usher. But we got to get through Great British Bake Off first. It's pastry week next week, Mike. Huge week.
Yeah, for sure. I'll mention here. It's funny. I mentioned this to Alan too. Here, it's fun because like the way he incorporates some of these big name actors he's worked with into the show is very fun because like Bruce Greenwood is the main character. He's Roderick Usher, and like I think the kid he has 6 different children by like 5 different mothers, and the kids are played by Henry Thomas, Samantha Sloyan, Rahul Kohli, Kate Siegel, one of the kids from Midnight Club last year, and Tania Miller. So like it basically is like, yeah, these are all my children. So it's like basically like Bruce Greenwood's character is like a representation of Flanagan. Like, oh, these are all my children that I like.
Right. Right. These are all the people I've ushered into movie fame, and horror representation. Now they will all be underneath my umbrella.
Yeah, and Carla Gugino is a fantastic villain in this show.
So yeah, I have to watch it. I'm excited. I'm sad to see the Flanagan era from Netflix coming to an end, but as long as he has other projects lined up, again, I think we were talking before the show, he doesn't stop working. So I'm excited for it.
I give him credit too because when Netflix canceled Midnight Club last year, it was supposed to be a 2-season show. They canceled after one. He did keep to his word. He did go on like I think it was like on maybe it was like Reddit or something where he basically told the audience exactly what he was going to do with every character on the show. So I give him credit for that too.
Oh, okay, I'll have to go look that up. I didn't know he went on Reddit and kind of explained the arc.
Yeah, he explained everything, like who was going to die when, like what was happening, like with Heather Langenkamp, like all that fun stuff he explained.
I was not aware that Mike Flanagan was just active on Reddit. That's something I just never knew or never would have thought of.
Yeah, so that was going on here, Stanko. Thanks all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on social media. How can they do that?
They could follow me online at stankostance.com. It's a combination of NFL stuff and movie stuff right now. Trying to blend those two things, and follow me on social media at jstanko99.